Why don't rope rescuers ever get lost in ICS? Because they always have a plan to anchor everything in place. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's dive into size up. Size up is the first thing we do when we arrive on a rope rescue call. It's the process of quickly evaluating the scene and figuring out what we're working with before we do anything. It's like taking a snapshot of the situation, the big picture and the small details, everything that could influence how we approach the rescue. Here's what we're looking at. Scope, magnitude, and nature of the incident. What's going on here? Is this a simple rescue, or is it something bigger that requires more resources? Location, number, and condition of subjects. Where are the victims? How many people need help? Are they in bad shape, or are they able to help themselves? Risk versus benefit. What are we weighing here? Should we go for a full rescue, or is this a situation where recovery is the smarter, safer option? Access to the scene. Can we get in easily? Do we need to go around obstacles, or is the path clear? Environmental factors. What's the weather like? Wind, rain, terrain. What's the scene throwing at us, and how will it affect the operation? Available resources. Do we have what we need? Are we properly equipped, or do we need to request more resources to help? Ability to make patient contact safely. How do we approach the subject? Can we safely get to them without endangering anyone else? A solid size up takes just a moment, but it sets the tone for the entire operation. It gives the team the information they need to start working on a plan. But here's the thing, size up isn't a one-and-done deal. It's ongoing. Things change as the rescue progresses, so we need to keep re-evaluating. In rope rescue, what we do during that initial size up can directly impact the success or failure of the mission. So, when you arrive, perform your size up, then keep updating it as the situation evolves. Let's talk about size up, the first thing we do when we arrive on scene. Size up is all about quickly assessing the situation to decide on the course of action and the resources we'll need. The goal is to get a big picture view of the incident and identify anything that could affect the rescue. You need to think about both the short term and long term, what needs to happen right now, and what could happen later that will affect the rescue. Size up is done quickly and efficiently, but it's also something we reassess constantly throughout the operation. It gives everyone, including incoming teams and command, the information needed to move forward and adapt the plan as needed. A solid size up includes scope, magnitude, and nature of the incident. Location, number, and condition of the subjects. A risk versus benefit analysis to decide whether this is a full rescue or recovery. Access to the scene and how to get in. Environmental factors. What's the weather or terrain like? Available resources. Do we have what we need, or more is required? Ability to safely make contact with the subject without endangering anyone. A good size up gives us the foundation to plan and adapt. It's not just a one-time assessment, size up is ongoing. Every time new resources arrive, reevaluate, because what we do in this phase directly impacts the mission's success. Determining the scope of the rescue is one of the first steps you take once you're on scene. The intent of the rescue must be clear right from the start, even before you start selecting your resources. The scope is essentially about understanding what needs to be done to achieve the goal. It's about clearly defining what we're trying to accomplish and how we're going to get there. You need to make these decisions quickly so that you can plan for everything that comes next. Having the scope defined up front helps focus the team and direct resources effectively. A clear scope will guide several key decisions during the rescue, including team size and capabilities. How many people do we need, and what skill sets must they have to execute the rescue? Needed equipment. What tools and equipment are essential for this specific situation? Estimated time to complete. How long do we expect the operation to take, and how will this affect our planning? Additional resources. Do we need backup teams, extra equipment, or external resources? Everything we do, from the personnel we deploy to the equipment we use, is based on the scope of the rescue. So, the clearer the scope, the smoother the operation will run. The scope of the rescue is driven by a few key principles. Removing the subject from harm. The main goal is to get the victim out of danger as safely and quickly as possible. Minimizing loss of life, injury, and property damage, it's not just about rescuing the person, it's about doing it in a way that prevents additional harm. Timely and efficient execution, we need to act fast, but also make sure we do it right. The quicker we can safely execute the rescue, the better. Scope varies depending on the scene. Each incident presents different challenges, and the scope can change as we gather more information. For each incoming unit, the scope narrows and becomes more specific. The rescue leader must coordinate all efforts and ensure the team is working together toward a successful conclusion. Identifying how many subjects need to be rescued or cared for is one of the first and most important tasks for the rescue leader. This is where everything starts. At first, the exact number of subjects might not be clear. That's why it's crucial to take a step back and ensure you're considering the full scene. Look around carefully, there might be hidden or overlooked victims that need attention. If you arrive and the number of casualties is high, you could be dealing with a mass casualty incident, when the number of victims exceeds the number of rescuers available. This is a different situation that requires a shift in strategy to handle the overwhelming needs of the scene. As the rescue leader, your job is to keep track of the subjects, their conditions, and the overall scope of the rescue operation. No matter the number of casualties, there are some fundamental safety priorities that must be followed at all times. Personal safety is your number one priority. You can't help anyone if you're not safe. Always look out for yourself first. Fellow rescuer safety comes second. Once you're safe, make sure the people on your team are protected. A team is only as strong as its weakest member. Subject safety is third. The next priority is ensuring the safety of the people we're rescuing. We can't compromise their well-being during the rescue process. Bystander safety is the fourth priority. Make sure bystanders are kept out of harm's way. They're part of the environment we need to secure. By following these priorities, we maintain order and ensure that everyone, rescuers, victims, and bystanders, are protected as the rescue progresses. Establish the last known location of subjects. One of the first steps in any rescue operation is establishing the last known location of the subject, also known as the LKP. This point of reference is critical because it helps us get a clear starting point for the search and expedites the rescue process. In many cases, the LKP is the last place where the subject was seen or known to be. Some agencies may refer to it as the point last seen, PLS, but it's essentially the same thing. It's where the subject was last positively identified. In some situations, we can get helpful information from technology to pinpoint the LKP more accurately. Cell phone location. Cell phones can provide a general location, but keep in mind, the accuracy depends on cell tower availability. So, this might not be 100% reliable, and you'll likely need to work with cell phone authorities to get access to that data. Satellite technology. Some agencies use subscription-based satellite technology that integrates location information via a global satellite network, providing more accurate data. If the subject isn't found at the LKP, our first task becomes finding them. This LKP forms the basis for the initial scope of the rescue, guiding the search efforts and shaping our next steps. The first step in gathering valuable information is identifying the reporting party, the person who called for the rescue. This could be the subject themselves, or it could be someone else. If the reporting party is not the subject, they might not even be present at the scene. The reporting party is often the first person who can provide key details about the situation, so it's critical to get in touch with them as soon as possible. One of the top priorities when we arrive on scene is to isolate and interview the reporting party. We need to separate them from the scene, any media presence, and other interviewees to preserve the integrity of the information they provide. This isolation ensures that the reporting party remains available to us, and prevents any external influence from distorting their account. It's also best practice to keep interviewees separate from each other, which helps us avoid any cross-contamination of details. Good interview candidates are not just the reporting party, but also anyone who might have first-hand information, such as eyewitnesses, family members, coworkers or schoolmates, friends. Interviewing the reporting party is unique because they may be stressed or emotionally distraught. The information they give may not always be linear or clear-cut. Sometimes, facts may not add up in the usual way, and in some cases, the reporting party may intentionally distort the information either due to stress or an ulterior motive. That's why it's important to have good interview techniques to ensure that we get the accurate information we need. We need to guide the conversation in a way that allows the person to share whatever relative details they can, even if the details seem fragmented at first. Interviewing the reporting party is unique because they may be stressed or emotionally distraught. The information they give may not always be linear or clear-cut. Sometimes, facts may not add up in the usual way, and in some cases, the reporting party may intentionally distort the information either due to stress or an ulterior motive. That's why it's important to have good interview techniques to ensure that we get the accurate information we need. We need to guide the conversation in a way that allows the person to share whatever relative details they can, even if the details seem fragmented at first. Forms can be incredibly helpful in structuring and organizing the information we gather from interviews. They help us ensure that we don't miss anything important and allow us to track specific details throughout the rescue. A good place to start is with the subject's profile, things like their name, age, appearance, skills, and any known medical conditions. From there, we can ask more specific questions about the time, place, and circumstances under which the subject was last seen. The information we gather can include the subject's name, age, and clothing, skills and familiarity with the area, physical and mental health, conditions surrounding the incident, injuries or health concerns, response activity already performed. This information helps us create a clear profile of the subject, which will guide us in understanding how they might behave once we find them, and it also helps in determining where they might be and what kind of resources we'll need for the rescue. Assessing resource needs begins after we've gathered information about the scope, subject, and situation. Once we understand the incident, we can figure out exactly what resources we'll need. This could be a combination of personnel and equipment, and these needs may change as the situation evolves. One of the most important parts of pre-planning is knowing what resources to request based on the scope, frequency, and magnitude of the potential incident. By having this knowledge ahead of time, we can act quickly and efficiently. We also need to consider that there's a lot of overlap between disciplines. For example, when you're working on a rope rescue, you may also need resources from other disciplines like structural collapse or confined space rescue, depending on the environment. A huge part of assessing resources is identifying the hazards on the scene. This allows command to request the right type of responder who can handle those specific dangers. Whether it's dealing with electrical hazards, confined spaces, or slippery terrain, knowing the hazards helps ensure we have the right resources, equipment, and personnel to tackle the situation effectively and safely. Let's take a moment to look at a clip from Saving Private Ryan. What you just saw is a perfect example of high-velocity lead poisoning, or more simply, gunfire. This is the main hazard that our soldiers in the movie had to deal with: fast, deadly projectiles coming from enemy positions, making it difficult to take cover or make a safe move. In rope rescue and other high-risk situations, while we may not be facing enemy machine guns, the principle is the same. We have to identify the primary hazard we're dealing with. In many rescues, this could be things like falling debris, unstable terrain, high winds, or dangerous machinery. The key takeaway here is that when you enter any rescue situation, understanding what the main hazard is helps you determine the right approach to minimize risk. Whether it's lead poisoning from bullets or a fall from a height, you need to know the big danger before you move forward. Now, as we move back into the rest of this section of the class, keep in mind how important hazard identification is when you're on scene. In a rope rescue, for example, the primary hazard could be fall potential, rope integrity, or weather conditions. Knowing your main hazard allows you to adjust your approach, plan for safe access, and prepare for what might go wrong. When we're looking at the scene, it's key to recognize what type of responder is needed. This is where a baseline understanding of the incident and the capabilities of responders comes into play. The environment we're working in often dictates what resources we'll need. For example, a rope rescue in a confined space will need very different equipment and teams than a rescue in mountain terrain. Here's a breakdown of environments where rope rescue is commonly coupled with other disciplines. Buildings and structures. Structural collapse incidents. Wilderness or mountain rescues. Communications or utility towers. Confined spaces. Trenches or excavations. Caves. Mines and tunnels. Lakes, rivers, and dams. Flood areas. Now, once we understand the scene and have assessed resources, we break the incident down into phases. A great approach for doing this is locate, access, stabilize, and transport. This helps break the scene into manageable segments, making it easier for command to control the operation. Here's how it works. Locate. First, find the subject or the specific area where the rescue needs to take place. Access. Figure out how to get to the subject, whether that's through a window, up a cliff, or into a confined space. Stabilize. Ensure the subject is stable and that any immediate hazards are controlled. Transport. Finally, move the subject to safety using the appropriate methods. By breaking the scene into these phases, command can stay organized and ensure that no part of the operation is overlooked. An Incident Action Plan (IAP) is essential for every rescue operation. It's the document that tracks the strategies and management decisions throughout the incident. The IAP serves as a roadmap, guiding the operation from start to finish and making sure everyone is on the same page. It encompasses both search and rescue efforts, making sure that every step is documented, evaluated, and refined as the operation progresses. What makes the IAP unique is that it's a living document. It evolves throughout the rescue, adjusting to new information, changing circumstances, and the operational needs as they develop. A solid IAP includes several key components to make sure the operation runs smoothly and efficiently. Goals and objectives. What are we aiming to accomplish, and what are the specific targets for each phase of the operation? Agencies and resources involved, which organizations are responding, and what resources are available or needed. Leadership roles and responsibilities, who's in charge, and who is responsible for which tasks or sections of the operation. Objectives by operational period and assigned resources, what tasks need to be done, and what resources, personnel and equipment, are assigned to each phase. Strategic and operational plans, the overall plan to address the incident, and the specific tactics we'll use to achieve the objectives. Transfer of authority, how authority is transferred over time or across jurisdictions, ensuring continuity of command. Demobilization plans, how will we safely wrap up the operation and ensure all resources are accounted for when the mission is complete. Now, when it comes to setting those goals and objectives, we use a method called SMART objectives. SMART stands for specific, clear and concise goals. Measurable, criteria for tracking progress. Achievable, goals should be realistic and attainable. Relevant, goals should align with the mission. Time-bound, deadlines to ensure tasks are completed promptly. The IAP is based on every available resource and must be developed with information from multiple sources. Starting with the incident size up, we gather data from the reporting party, pre-plans, and any available information from other agencies or personnel already on the scene. The Incident Command System, ICS, is crucial for defining roles and responsibilities. ICS provides the structure and procedures that everyone follows to make sure operations stay coordinated, no matter the complexity of the situation. Most operations will be managed through ICS, under the direction of the authority having jurisdiction, AHJ, which ensures the IAP stays aligned with local protocols and resources. In rope rescue, SMART objectives are crucial for keeping the operation focused, measurable, and on track. We use this framework to ensure we're not just setting random goals, but ones that are specific, achievable, and time-bound. It helps keep everyone aligned and working toward a clear, shared purpose. Let's break down how SMART objectives work in rope rescue. Specific, the goal should be clear and detailed. For example, instead of saying, rescue the victim, a more specific objective could be, secure the victim with a harness and belay system at the LKP, last known point, within 20 minutes. Measurable, we need a way to track progress. For instance, the time limit of 20 minutes in our example allows us to assess if we're on schedule or need to adjust. Achievable, the goal must be realistic. If the rescue involves navigating a steep cliff, setting a goal of securing the victim within 20 minutes is reasonable, but trying to complete the entire rescue in that timeframe might not be relevant. The goal needs to align with the overall mission. A relevant goal here might be focused on rescuing the victims safely and ensuring team readiness to move them to a safe location. Time-bound, finally, we set a deadline or time frame. Our goal of reaching the victim and securing them within 20 minutes gives everyone a clear timeline to follow and a sense of urgency. So, a good example of a SMART objective in rope rescue might be, secure the subject within 30 minutes using a twin tension rope system to prevent fall potential while ensuring all safety protocols are followed. That's clear, measurable, and realistic. Now, to wrap this chatting about SMART objectives, I don't always set cop-out goals. But when I do, I make them so broad I can't fail. When it comes to rope rescue, the value of pre-planning cannot be overstated. Using pre-plans during the preparation phase is critical for identifying potential hazards and ensuring you're ready for anything that could come up during the operation. But for pre-plans to be useful, someone needs to have actually conducted one. By studying the hazard areas beforehand, you can identify risks like unstable terrain, hazardous structures, or conditions that could impact the rescue. Pre-planning helps you anticipate what could go wrong and ensures you're prepared with the right strategies, resources, and equipment to mitigate those risks. The main takeaway here is that pre-plans are all about preparation. The more you know about the potential hazards before you arrive, the better you can equip your team and plan the most effective course of action. Materials for use during an incident. Once you're on the scene, you'll rely on materials that are easy to reference during the rescue, like field guides and checklists. These resources are designed for quick access and can be turned into checklists that keep you on track with essential tasks during the operation. Just a reminder, when you're working at height, make sure your field guides and checklists are secure and within reach. We don't want to risk losing critical information when you need it most. When we talk about search parameters, the first thing to understand is that the sooner a search is started, the more successful it will likely be. Speed is critical in finding a lost subject. The urgency of the search should match the risk of the operation. If a subject is in a dangerous environment or has medical needs, the urgency needs to be high, and we need to act quickly to locate them. Several factors can increase the urgency of the search. Age, very young or elderly subjects may have more difficulty navigating and are at a higher risk. Medical conditions, if the subject has a medical condition or requires medication, this can increase the urgency of the search. Weather, hazardous weather conditions can make a search more critical and difficult. Both hot and cold-related injuries are serious considerations, especially in extreme environments. In hot conditions, heat stroke or heat exhaustion can set in quickly, especially if the subject is not adequately hydrated or wearing appropriate clothing. Cold injuries are just as critical. It doesn't take much to put someone at risk of hypothermia. Even mild wind and rain can cause cold-related injuries, especially if the subject is wet and exposed for extended periods. As little as 50 degrees Fahrenheit with 20 miles per hour winds can make it feel like 30 degrees Fahrenheit, increasing the risk of hypothermia. Experience/skills of the subject. If the subject is inexperienced or unprepared for the environment, they may be at a higher risk. Equipment. Ill-equipped subjects are at greater risk, which increases the urgency of the search. The definition of the search area is ongoing throughout the rescue. We start by identifying high-probability areas, places where the subject is most likely to be based on available information. But as we gather more clues, the area will either expand or contract, depending on new findings. A key part of this is understanding lost person behavior. People act differently when lost, depending on their mental state, age, and the activity they were doing when they got lost. For example, adults tend to stay on trails, seek high ground for visibility, and rarely backtrack. Children are often poor judges of distance and direction, and they tend to look for something familiar. By considering these behaviors, we can adjust our search strategy accordingly. The earlier the search is initiated, the higher the chances of success. But we also need to be realistic about what's possible given the time of day. If the search is initiated at night, we need to assess whether a nighttime search is feasible based on the capabilities of our responders and the available equipment. Some searches are best conducted during the day to improve visibility, but we must also consider the risks to the subject and responders at night. Remember, 50% of searches are resolved within 3 hours, and most subjects are typically within 2 miles of the last known location. When the search begins, our initial goals should be clear. Containment: we want to confine the subject to a small area. This reduces the chances of the subject wandering further away. We can use strategies like patrol routes, lookouts, and perimeter controls to limit movement. Attraction: get the subject's attention using noises like horns, sirens, or whistles. At night, we can use flashlights, vehicle lights, or even emergency lights. Listening is just as important to pause and listen for any sounds coming from the subject. Hasty search: this is a quick, high-priority search in high-probability areas, focused on finding clues like footprints, scent, or discarded items. Speed is key here, but we must be careful not to damage potential clues. If the initial search doesn't succeed, we move to detailed search methods. These searches are typically more refined and segmented into smaller sub-areas. We want to improve our chances of detection. In this phase, we calculate the probability of detection, POD, which is the likelihood of finding the subject or relevant clues within a given area. Detailed search methods help us cover more ground and ensure that no potential clue is missed. One of the most important aspects of any rescue operation is ensuring information continuity. To do this, we use standardized collection formats for the information we gather. This ensures that everyone involved in the rescue has access to the same, accurate details, and it helps avoid confusion later in the operation. Standardized formats allow for clarification if needed, and help make sure no critical information is overlooked. Clear, consistent communication is key to the success of the rescue, especially when coordinating with multiple teams or agencies. Upon the initial size up, here's the critical information you need to relay to command and incoming units. Incident location and access route: where is the incident, and how can rescuers access it? Number of subjects: how many people are involved, and what's their condition? Additional parties involved: are there other people or teams on site that we need to coordinate with? Suspected injuries: what injuries or medical issues are known at the moment? Current rescue efforts: what's being done to address the situation right now? Distances involved: how far is the subject from safe extraction or accessible areas? Anticipated hazards: what are the expected risks, like terrain, weather, or environmental dangers? Reporting party and callback number: who reported the incident, and how can they be contacted if more information is needed? This initial information helps establish the scope of the operation and ensures the team is ready to respond appropriately. When we relay information, it's helpful to use the who, what, when, where, why, how framework. This gives us a comprehensive overview of the incident, and it makes sure we're covering all the bases. Let's break this down. Who is impacted? How many subjects are there? What's their age, gender, and any other relevant details about the subjects? And who else is on scene with them? What happened? What's the mechanism of injury or nature of illness? What is their present condition? Are they conscious, stable, or in critical condition? When did the incident occur? When was the call initiated? And when did any changes in the subject's condition occur? Now, continuing with the who, what, when, where, why, how framework. Where is the incident? Where should rescuers access the subject? Also, where's the evacuation point? Where will we take the subject once they're rescued? Why is the rescue needed? Why is the subject incapacitated, and why is help required in the first place? What makes the situation dangerous for the subject and rescuers? How will the subject need to be removed from the scene? What's the plan for extraction? And how can responders obtain more information as the situation evolves? By collecting this information systematically, we're able to relay it in a consistent manner, allowing for better coordination, quicker decisions, and a more efficient operation overall. To wrap up everything we've discussed so far, let's review some key takeaways that will help set the stage for a successful rope rescue operation. Initial size-up is the foundation for any rescue. It provides the critical information needed to assess the situation and start making decisions. Ongoing size-up is just as important. It's a tool that needs to be used throughout the entire operation to ensure everything is progressing smoothly. The first unit that arrives should immediately take responsibility for completing a preliminary size-up and assuming command of the incident. This ensures quick coordination and action. Determining the scope of the rescue helps define the intended outcome and the resources required. It's essential to know exactly what needs to be done and how much manpower, equipment, and time are needed. Identifying the number of subjects involved is crucial. It helps define the scope of the incident and guides resource allocation. Establishing the last known location of the subject often requires interviewing the reporting party, ensuring the search area is accurately defined. Assessing resource needs starts with pre-planning and includes understanding the community's needs and identifying appropriate resources based on the incident's scope. Every response may involve all 4 phases of a rescue: locate, access, stabilize, and transport. These phases ensure the subject's safety and the success of the mission. The Incident Action Plan (IAP) is essential. It should include operational goals and objectives, agencies and resources involved, leadership roles and responsibilities, objectives for each operational period, strategic and operational plans, transfer of authority across multiple operational periods or jurisdictions, demobilization plans to ensure a safe and organized end to the operation. Once the last known location is confirmed, the search perimeter can be established, guiding the search efforts. The initial goals of a search operation include containment of the subject to a limited area, attracting the subject's attention using noise or visual signals, hasty search of high-probability areas to find the subject as quickly as possible. By staying focused on these steps, staying organized, and keeping the lines of communication clear, we give ourselves the best chance for a successful outcome in any rescue operation. You know you're a rope rescuer when you size up the situation and think, "This is not as bad as it looks."